Hey everyone, and welcome to this season's draft analysis. We're going to be doing the violet side of things over here for season 19. So it'll be me, Adam, Coach Black J 32, and my co-host this time, Emerson.
Hey everybody, yep, it's Emerson with the Dalton Dragapults Rogue Rotom, and really excited to be doing this with Adam.
Thank you so much for joining me, Emerson. You're pulling double duty this time. Thank you. So you're the real MVP, making this happen, and we're gonna get some good content out to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we launched in too much, Emerson, I thought it would be really fun if we just spend a little bit of time, since our last season, since then, Scarlet and Violet have come out. Obviously, that's what our season is this time around. But I just wanted to ask you, how has your experience been actually playing the games? Which one did you get? And, are you over under the hours logged? And, did it meet your expectations? All those things.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I got Scarlet, and last night I was shiny hunting and just wanted to check how many hours I've logged, and I officially have 205 hours in the
Woo!
game. So I absolutely love it. It's definitely the most fun I've ever had playing a Pokemon game, on a console. Um, uh, I definitely really like it a lot. The open world aspect, really being able to see all the Pokemon out in the wild. Lots of people that I talked to, and including me, had the experience of just running through their playthrough and seeing a shiny, full odd shiny, and being super excited about that. So I had, nicknames throughout my game, and one of my favorite Pokemon is Clodsire. His name was Goober throughout my game. And I thought it was actually pretty challenging too. There was, having to make some, pretty calculated switches, and just trying to explore the map and figure out where to go next.
Yeah, that is such a good point. And I have to say I'm sad that I did not see a shiny on my casual
Mm,
playthrough. Um, but I have really enjoyed this one. I also had Scarlet as well. And I did not get Legends Arceus, so this is the first time I've done the open world thing on Pokemon. And I have to say that my favorite part is it's just some quality of life stuff, like not having to like run through the grass and like go to a separate battle screen to see if the Pokemon that you're looking for is the one that you actually ran into. Like
yeah.
that is was such a huge quality of life thing. And so as a result, I haven't actually completed the Pokedex yet, but I basically all I need to do is just trade for all the Violet exclusives and the Pokemon that you need to trade to evolve. Um, so I'm pretty much there, which is not anything that I've ever achieved in a Pokemon game before. So I had a ton of fun. It was really fun to like meet. I stayed away from the competitive stuff until after beating the game, and so it was really fun to see the Pokemon one by one as they appeared, and oh, what's this? Oh my gosh, what type is it? So
Yeah.
that was really really enjoyable for me.
Do you have a favorite Pokemon of Gen 9? Maybe a
It's a
difficult
great
question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I was thinking about it, and I have to pick a Pokemon that I used in my playthrough, and I think that Charcadet is
Hmm.
just so cute, so fun. I know it's a pretty low spawn rate, and I ran into it immediately. I got like a level 11 Charcadet. It was like my third Pokemon or fourth Pokemon, something like that, that actually made its way onto my team. And yeah, it was just extremely fun. Um, I eventually evolved it, but only after basically I beat the game, and I was like, God, how do I get this thing to evolve? So anyway, but that it's really cute. I love the design. I think that the name is really fun. Um, and I like the dual evolution. I think it's clever. So I'd say that is one of my top uh, favorite new Pokemon.
Yeah, I also have to add in one of my other favorite Pokemon. New Pokemon is Cyclizar.
Oh.
And I had a Cyclizar during my playthrough, and his name was Dirt Bike. So that he is like very close to my heart. So yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's another thing that was really nice about this game is there were some really cool Pokemon that you could get right away. I didn't feel like I was locked
Hmm.
into just like, oh, I have to use Spidey Ops until, it's level 36 and I can finally, try something else new. So I really appreciated that.
Yeah, even the aspect of being able to encounter fully evolved Pokemon just walking around, like you just see a Gallade in the mountains, you're like, hey, I don't know if I've seen that before.
Right, right. So it was great. And, there are some obvious problems with the game, which we don't have to get into. But yeah, I had a really fun time playing it. Sounds like you are continuing to enjoy your time.
Yes, I am a avid shiny hunter, so that's been really fun for me.
That'll, last you for a long time.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Um,
Well, without further ado, would you like to introduce our first team that we're going to talk about?
yeah, absolutely. So first team we're going to talk about is the Houston Haxorus with Ian. You can see on the screen here we have their team pulled up, and it has the different typing charts and different moves that they get. So Adam and I are just kind of going to review what the team does, maybe how it works together, what our impressions are. But I think Ian's team really stands out to me as just very offensive. Very good synergy too between the offensive Pokemon. So Chen Pao, I like refer to it as the broken kitty because it just is. Even like holding a broken sword in its mouth. Super fast and super offensive. I mean, just the ability that it has where automatically your opponent's defense is reduced by 25%. I remember first playing in the Smogon tournament. I was team building with Kyle, and I was like, so if I switch out, that means that, the Pokemon that I bring in, their defense is going to be fine, right? And he's like, no, it just is, constantly at 20, 25% lower. I'm like, are you serious? So, it's a really good ability. Um, so Iron Moth is also just a really, really strong special attacker. Hydreigon as a Terra Captain, I love that Ian made that choice to make Hydreigon the Terra Captain. People are kind of joking about Hydreigon's my new favorite Steel type. That's a type that often Terra's into to kind of counter its double fairy weakness. And just some interesting tech when I was helping Danny build his team to play the Houston Hacksters last week. Doxbun has the ability Well Baked Body, where it's immune to fire moves, and if it gets hit by a fire move, which includes Will-O-Wisp, its defense is raised sharply. So, your opponent's like, all right, I'm just going to, try and burn Champao. Ian predicts that or any type of fire move goes into Doxbun. And that is just such a great counter. So Doxbun's super, super bulky, has wish support. I think that people kind of sleep on Doxbun. It's an amazing support Pokemon. I feel like it's very much a draft league kind of esque Pokemon. Just some notes. Speed tiers are absolutely excellent. There's how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Pokemon that are over 90 base speed, which is absolutely incredible. Quaquavol's speed tier is also a little bit deceiving because it has that move Aqua Step to increase its speed. So Ian has a lot of momentum. So lots of U-turners. I guess Electrode counts as a momentum mon, but maybe not going to see that one every week. Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities for Ian to kind of get in their special attackers, physical attackers safely with those pivot options. Bronzong is also an amazing support Pokemon for Iron Moth because it has that ability Levitate to mitigate that ground weakness from Iron Moth. So really, really love a lot of things about this team. Talking about hazards, a little bit lacking on the hazards. Bronzong is potentially the only viable hazard setter with Stealth Rocks at least. Hydreigon does get Stealth Rock this gen, so I think that that's an interesting tech.
Oh, that is interesting.
So, and lots of Pokemon are threatened by Hydreigon, so if you're predicting a switch, go ahead and get your rocks up. I think it might be a little bit difficult to fit rocks on Hydreigon when it wants to run so many coverage moves or nasty plots, sub, whatever. Toxic spikes from Iron Moth can be really helpful too. Again, you're forcing out a lot of Pokemon that are scared of it. Get your T spikes up. Hazard removal is pretty good with Braviary, Quaquaval. Another thing is also trying to find room on Quaquaval sets to run Rapid Spin. It wants to run, kind of classically at least 6 moves every week. So you want to run your U-turn, your Aqua Step, Close Combat, possibly like Dream Punch, or what's the like Sword Stance, Bulk Up. So just some thoughts there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of really amazing things about this team. It's definitely one of my favorite drafts, and it just looks so scary from the top, the top down. The top 7 really are great. And I liked what you pointed out with Hydreigon and being a good Terra captain. I think removing that dual, quad fairy weakness is going to be really big for it. And I think there's also, interesting, so Iron Moth, we get the sort of special setup, though it doesn't have Quiver Dance, I learned recently.
Right.
So I'm kind of curious about, if that's going to be more on the agility side or more booster energy. I'm kind of curious to see which path Ian goes with that. But Hydreigon, I wonder with that Terra Captain if there's an opportunity for some Dragon Dance, some physical sets,
Mm-hmm.
and you could Terra Blast, get your physical Terra Blast in. I think also that on the hazard side, maybe when I was kind of going through and looking initially, I wasn't really thinking about Florgato,
Mm-hmm.
also, which I think gets spikes. Um, and Bronzong is probably going to be in your top 6 each week, Ian. So I could definitely see, feeling like you have a reliable hazard setter there.
Right.
Um, yeah.
Um, Something else I was going to say is so when I had my first draft league season, which was the Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, I drafted Heatran, which is, similar to Iron Moth in that it has that 4 times ground weakness. But I remember Kyle telling me that my Heatran looked like one of the safest Heatrans ever because I had Uxie for Levitate. I had Staraptor, I had Rotom Washed, just switch into those ground moves. And I mean, look at this with Ian's typings just down here. Yes, we have the 4 times weakness to ground, but Levitate with Hydreigon, Levitate with Bronzong, Levitate with Haunter. Flying type with Braviary. So there's just so many ways that Ian can leverage that and not have to be really concerned about EQ spam. So
Yeah, I think that's really great. And this is going to be an extremely difficult team to beat. We were kind of racking our brains, at the beginning, trying to, give a little bit of advice to coaches that are prepping against, each team. And for this one, one of the things that I really came to is, and probably because of, as you mentioned, Emerson, that the meta is so offensive.
mm-hmm.
Um, that this is probably going to be true for a lot of teams, but I think that momentum is going to be huge, and not just like momentum moves, but really keeping your offensive pressure, keeping, you want your opponent to be switching, not you.
Yeah.
And one of the most important things to make that happen is to get your lead right. If
Mm-hmm.
you have the best matchup on turn 1, then one thing that you can't do when you face this team is you can't pick a lead that is gonna lose to Chien Pao. Because if that's the case, then you're gonna have to pick a sack on turn 1.
Yep.
And you cannot beat this team if you have to sack on turn 1. Um, and so that's something you really need to be thinking about in prep is like, what can I do to to sort of maintain pressure and to not have a matchup where I have to sack on turn one.
That's
Um,
absolutely incredible advice. Because yeah, I can see a situation. Ian leans Chimp out, and you're sitting there like, well, what's my move?
I have a fond memory of a long time ago, maybe season 5 or possibly season 6. I had a game against Kyle where he brought Excadrill, and I had to I had to like, oh no, 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 Virizion maybe.
Hmm.
I had to turn one sack against him,
Wow.
and I was just like, I can't. Yeah, it was a really incredible match, but I just remember that being very strongly, and I think this team in particular will really uh, you'll benefit if you think about that.
Yeah, definitely. Some other notes on, potentially how to beat this team. Basically kind of forcing Chen Pao and Iron Moth to wear boots, or if they don't wear
Mm,
boots and you have hazards up the whole time, those attackers are just going to, take that chip. So, there's definitely merit to playing a really good hazard game against this team. Um, and potentially like a scarfed special attacker to try and deal with Chen Pao. Um, but I agree with you. This is going to be a tough team to beat.
yeah, this is going to be one to pull out what's your surprise that your low tier, can bring.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, 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 yeah. So one thing, I guess, do you have anything else you wanted to say about this team?
I don't think so. I was going to move on unless you had anything else to say.
Yeah, I wanted just a little sort of intervening comment here. I wanted to ask you, what did you think about the draft being 10 Pokemon instead of 11 this season?
I definitely prefer it. One, I'm in another draft league right now, and we have 12, and
Oh,
I
interesting.
I am just like, this is so many Pokemon to prep for.
Mm,
Actually, interestingly, in the Smogon tournament, we had 8. So you could
hmm.
really try and make some predictions on these are probably the 6 that my opponent is going to bring. I kind of like having more than that, so it's not quite as predictable. Like this 10 Pokemon in this, our league right now, I think it's kind of perfect. It's, not as much pressure to kind of try and prep for even just one more Pokemon feels like, all right, if they bring this, if I don't have a counter to, even some of their low tiers, what am I going to do? So I actually like it. But what are your thoughts about it?
That's so interesting to hear you say it that way because I actually think that I really like it as well, but kind of for a different reason, which is that I always find myself drafting not not the most top heavy team. And I really want that to be successful, but I often find that throughout the season, um, I'm losing to top heavy teams because I
Mm,
just don't have that extra oomph. And so I kind of felt like um, having 10 Pokemon, and plus the way that the tiers were spaced out, where it was sort of,
yeah.
a 10-point Pokemon had to be your sort of middle instead of like 12.
Hmm.
Um, I thought that's really good because what it means is that Pokemon teams that are more top heavy, they can't just have a bunch of trash Pokemon to be, pardon my French there, but they can't just have like a bunch of terrible Pokemon at the bottom that are sort of, all the great top tiers are just like standing on top of.
Yeah.
Um, and so this is what I'm hoping is that 10 Pokemon teams are going to force those top heavy teams to basically be dipping down into their low tiers more
Mm,
frequently. And that has been one of my favorite parts of Draft League is that it makes low tiers viable. It's why I like it better than OU say. OU's
Yes.
fun, but doesn't quite have the variety that Draft League has. So I'm excited about it for that reason. And I think that you know, during the draft, it felt like everyone was kind of running low on points.
Hmm.
But I kind of like that. I think that it's actually, we sort of artificially expect that we can get lots of top tiers because of the way our point system previously worked. And actually, it's a good thing for people to have fewer top tiers. Now, when you look at Ian's team, they clearly, it's like, wait a minute, are you sure that Ian's going to have to really dip into low tiers to each week? And it's not clear to me that that's really the case, but I think that's because Ian drafted a really fantastic team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that we'll, get to my team later, but I was the only one that did not draft a 14-point Pokemon. So,
Mm,
like even just thinking about, okay, what kind of roles are these 14 pointers playing, and Hydreigon and, Quaquaval are just so offensive. So I think it's interesting maybe even to just look at, the differentiation of how different coaches use their points. But yeah, I love the kind of discourse around maybe this will force some coaches to bring their low tiers, and I'm just excited to see how this changes the way that draft league is for us.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's exciting. It's sort of injecting some new life.
Sure.
Um, I think, I hope. Um, so who do we have next?
We have the Ankhepri Scolipedes, coached by Liam. So
Woo!
wow. Um, Iron Valiant Dragapult. Who let this happen? I just, oh my gosh, it's so neat to see both of those Pokemon on a team. Also with Volcarona, Dondozo. I mean, just these top four here are just, I mean, that's absolutely an OU team just right there. Um,
Mhm.
just with the speed of Iron Valiant, the speed of Dragapult, extremely fast team. We talked about, with Ian's team, there's a lot of Pokemon that are over 90. Liam's team, one, two, three, four, five Pokemon are at or over 100 base speed. So,
Mhm.
and even, Jolteon, Espeon, those I think can be really potent attackers, potentially Pokemon that Liam might bring each week. So, speed tiers are probably going to be difficult to deal with. I think that that's one of the really strong aspects about this team. Um,
I have to jump in here and actually disagree with you a little bit,
mm,
Emerson. I was looking at the speed tiers, and there are, of course, especially Iron Valiant and Dragapult are going to be really difficult. But I was noticing there's a big speed gap between Volcarona at base 100 and Cacturn at base 55.
that's true.
And so what I am sort of imagining is that there's going to be a lot of base 100, base 95s that are running like defensive. They can run adamant, they can run modest and defensive EVs. They basically, you're not going to outspeed. You don't have to even worry about it. You can really kind of titrate those EVs well, and you'll be actually. I'm a little bit concerned for Liam's
Mm,
team that opponents will be very freed up in their ability to sort of flex Pokemon into different roles, or sort of dodge the standard calcs, so to speak. So that's sort of a concern that I have about this team, actually.
yeah, I think that that's extremely valid. I think I look at just the just right in front of you. You have so much speed, but then like you said in draft league, it's so important to think about how the speed tiers will affect how your opponent builds against you. So yeah, that definitely could be a concern with this team. Um, yeah, kind of some more positives about the team. I think Dragapult being just, that very fast pivot to get other things in, I think is really great. I think just offensively, Iron Valiant, Dragapult, definitely a monster combo. Um, also with Dondozo, Dondozo can be just a really incredible switch into those physical attacks. I in the Smoke on Draft Tour, I saw one of the replays where Dondozo was the win con because the opponent only had physical attackers left with a curse, body press, or liquidation, rest, sleep talk. Dondozo is the win con, so I think that that's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of big on Knuckle Stack as like a exciting low tier. I think it's, Salt Cure is a really great move. It's good to get rocks. And as a Terra captain, I think it fits really nicely in with Dondozo. We all kind of know that Garganackle is a really good Terra captain as well, or certainly on the ladder. It's been doing well with maybe Terra Fairy,
Mm-hmm.
say. So I'm excited about Knuckle Stack. I am a little bit concerned that the hazards are kind of in the lower tiers,
Yeah.
which maybe is not so much of a concern with such a huge offensive, beat up front. It's just a shame that none of like Iron Valiant, Dragapult, Volcarona, or Dondozo really have much in the way, or they don't have any hazards.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Volcarona lost Defog. Is that right? A lot
Oh,
of Pokemon
actually,
lost.
yeah, this is in the wrong format. Um,
Um,
so if we switch that, maybe it'll update here. Let's see. Might have to
yeah,
refresh the page.
I'm showing that Volcarona has lost defog.
Yep,
Um, and so really what I'm seeing, from removal is that, you have Espeon with the magic bounce, and you get Avalugg, and I think
that's it.
that may be it. So, I think this team is going to have to be spending a lot of effort pressuring Hazard setters on the other team. Really thinking about if I go down Dozo here, is that going to be passive enough that even though I'm a water type, they can come in and get their spike or whatnot. And that may also involve being really aggressive with switching Espeon in to magic bounce some of those
Mm-hmm.
away, or at least get in your opponent's head enough that they feel like it's too risky to click that move.
Right.
So I think that could be play an important role in how you'll play the team, Liam.
Yeah, yeah, and agreed with the lack of hazard removal and of hazards potentially being in those or that they are in those low tiers. I think one approach that Liam could have is just every week just hyper offense, and just try and just power through some people's teams. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it'll be pretty. Hopefully Liam will be in a good position to basically identify. Okay, I have so many win con options. Iron Valiant wins as soon as these two can. As soon
Yep.
as this Pokemon's down and this one is at 66% or less. Same thing with Dragapult. So you can kind of think about what are my different win conditions and that keep things alive and I think you'll do really well with this team, Liam.
Yeah, I think both Iron Valiant and Dragapult being they could be either physical attackers or special attackers brings a just level of I don't know what Liam's gonna bring this week. Iron Valiant can run mixed sets. I mean, Dragapult can run mixed sets. Um, it's I think that that's a really good just kind of getting in your opponent's heads about what they might bring that week.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're, matching up against the Scolipedes, of course, like we were talking about earlier, I think it's important to think about your leads and keeping pressure up. But I think that if you can find an opening to get your hazards up, if you can find a way to get through Magic Bounce or take out Espeon, or Espeon doesn't come, get those hazards up, win the hazard war, take advantage of the fact that so many of these mons are grounded. Actually, I think everyone is grounded.
Yeah, so that's
Um,
another, Liam doesn't have a ground immunity. Um, so might be something to, bring something with a stab ground move. So
right, right. That would definitely, put this team in a difficult position. So, yeah, I think it'll be fun to watch and see how this team does.
yeah, absolutely. Next up is the Lisbon Lechonk, newly branded. Um, Very excited for the Lechonk to make their appearance.
It's so cute.
I
What a
know.
fantastic mascot. Really excited for Chris and for their team.
Yeah. All right. So, I love this team, but also I'm biased because Garganacl is one of my favorite Pokemon ever. And actually, in the Smogon tour, I had the combination of Roaring Moon and Garganacl, and it's just absolutely incredible. I love that Chris drafted a Sun team. And super excited to see what they do with, Screamtail, Photosynthesis. We have Scovillain, Chlorophyll user. We have Leafeon, Chlorophyll user. Then, with Roaring Moon, can also use that Photosynthesis ability. I think that this has the potential to be just a really incredible team with that Sun. Um,
It's really exciting. I'm surprised that more coaches didn't take that tact of like, oh my gosh, photosynthesis, and all of these amazing Pokemon are sort of at the top of the draft. Why not just, take a mid-round pick to get Torkoal and, save myself the booster energies and plus get rocks and rapid spin and
yeah.
all those nice things. So it seems like I'm surprised that more people didn't go for it. It seems sort of just sort of apparently, sort of self apparently like very good, and I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, just with trying out the new point system and just trying to, I mean, I know I was just like, oh, I have to like, watch this now. I wasn't extremely concerned about points in the past, but, with those 4 pointers being the lowest, points, you really have to pay attention to that. And so I think Chris did a great job of, really planning their draft and being able to draft this team with, Torkoal being a 12 pointer. That Torkoal is not cheap. So, um,
Right,
yeah.
right,
So just kind of looking at this team, Roaring Moon is absolutely just such an incredible yeah, wall breaker offensive Pokemon that I love that potentially it can use that photosynthesis ability outside of having to run booster energy as its item. So, I can see Chris running, even like a bulky set of leftovers with Roaring Moon, having that be more of like a bulky pivot. Garganacl being that, switch into physical attacks. Oftentimes I found myself, using Garganacl as a counter to whatever their most potent physical attacker was on my opponent's team, and just completely shutting that down. So being able to open up Roaring Moon, Gengar, Gengar being more of a frail Pokemon, to really just be able to kind of get that in. Um, and another thing I really love about Chris's team is the amount of hazard options. So, Screamtail being a really cool utility Pokemon. I think a lot of people don't really know what to think of that Pokemon. This past weekend, Wolfie Glick won a regional event with Screamtail, where, everyone else was running the super heavy hitting, Paradox Pokemon. And here he is with his Screamtail that was just perfect, and it was a Parish Trap team. So, that's potentially something that Chris could run. One thing that I like is that Torkoal is not stuck in a role of just being the Stealth Rock Pokemon. Now, Torkoal is one of the only hazard removal options on this team besides Oricorio. But, sometimes Torkoal can't survive to both set rocks and then get a rapid spin off. So, having those options with Screamtail and Garganacl to set up those hazards, I think is really nice. Um, yeah.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say is it's out of my brain. I couldn't tell you what it was that I wanted to say. I mean, I think this team is great. Here's what I wanted to say. One thing that is going to make this team great is that knockoff was severely diminished in the number of Pokemon that can learn it. It's actually very surprising when I went and looked at my own team. I only have like one or two knockoff users, which is not something that I've had to pay very much attention to in the past. And so things like your Heat Rock on Torkoal are not going to get knocked off.
Right.
And Gengar, which is, pretty in the past, maybe you're hesitant to switch your Gengar in, on the fighting Pokemon on the Conkeldurr or whatever, because of the ease that they can just click knock off. And
Sure.
so I think that is going to really be a large benefit to this team. I also think that Magneton is a great fit here. In the for a lot of other Sun teams, they have a ton of fire Pokemon. This has Torkoal and Scovillain, which are Torkoal sets the sun. Scovillain, as you mentioned, is a chlorophyll user. But neither of those are particularly offensive like wall breakers.
Hmm.
And so Magneton is great to trap those steel types that are going to be in the way for Pokemon like Roaring Moon.
Sure.
And so I think that, especially compared to other Sun teams, that Magneton is a great fit here. Now you do still have the classic Edgequake weakness that you would expect on a Sun team, with Torkoal and Magneton. And it is unfortunate that Garganacl is going to have that weakness as well. And I'm trying to remember whether Gengar gets Levitate in this. No, it's only Cursed
No.
Body, so you're gonna be stuck with a decent Edgequake weakness, even in your non-Sun abusers. But oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Garganacl does have that ground weakness, but if you can get it to Terra before,
Oh,
you switch into an EQ while you're still rock type, that takes that away. So that's
right.
something that I would try and think about as I had this, in that tour was when can I get my Garganacl in? When can I just Terra it early so then I can switch in to Earthquakes? So,
Right. Chris, I want to see Terra Bug on
oh my
Garganacl.
God. you
Please,
know,
please, you run your Sun team with your Terra Bug.
I can see Chris doing that. Chris has just some wild sets, and I love the way that they team build. So I think Terrabug Garganacl could be a thing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Roaring Moon, I just want to go back to this a little bit. Roaring Moon, listen to this stat line. 105 HP, 71 defense, 101 special defense. That
Yep.
is extremely bulky on the special side. That is insane. And I believe that there is a little bit of wish support on this team from Leafeon.
Yep.
Um, you know, and I think
Also,
does Roaring Moon
Screamtail.
get Roost? And
Screamtail's kind of
Screamtail,
the premier Wish user. Yeah.
that's right. So I think this team does support Roaring Moon in a really great way. It really is going to let it have the flexibility that it needs to thrive. I would love to see. This would be fun. Okay, do this once, Chris. You run a set with Roaring Moon where its max stat is its special defense, and so you get special defense boost with your photosynthesis, and then you Dragon Dance up. So you run like super bulky, and you Dragon Dance up, and no one can touch you. So
That sounds
do that
incredible.
do that one week, please.
Yeah, yeah, and it's pretty easy to I think get that accomplished with the way that its stats are kind of distributed. I mean, I remember trying to get that boost for speed, and it wasn't that hard to make that speed stat more than whatever its other attacks or stats were. So yeah.
Right. So, how are you going to go about beating this team, Emerson? Maybe not you. How should one go about beating this team?
Hmm. Um. I think stab ground moves again. And if Oricorio doesn't make an appearance, then you know that there are no ground immunities. Leafeon, does have that ground resistance, but Leafeon is not. I mean, it's bulky on the defensive side. So I think, yeah, just having that EQ Stone Edge potentially spam. Um, I think this team is going to be hard to counter. Trying to wrap my mind around speed with the chlorophyll stuff. Potentially bringing something that knows rain dance or sandstorm to try and mitigate the weather stuff. But you're spending a turn to do that. So I'm not sure if
Right.
anybody else drafted in this. I'm pretty sure not drafted a Pokemon like Pelipper or Tyranitar that can automatically set that other weather.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. If you have a low tier and you need to make a trade to beat this team, maybe you could get like a Murkrow, get like your Prankster. I think that gets Rain Dance as
Yep.
well, something like that up. But honestly, don't let Torkoal come in for free.
Yep.
That it'll just live forever and keep getting the sun up. And for most of these Paradox Pokemon, the way they're going to be getting their boost is with the booster energy, which means that it's just a one time in the match. But with the sun, they're not limited to just a one-time use of
Right.
their photosynthesis. So yeah, I think this is going to be a tough team. Maybe look for a Pokemon on your team that has a good matchup. I can imagine certain fighting types that are going to be, you can scarf your fighting type for Roaring Moon
Hmm.
and have your close combat into Garganacl and your knockoff for Gengar and Torkoal. But I think maybe it'll be matchup dependent. It's possible that if you can set up first,
Mm.
if you can, figure out how to outspeed, if you get a setup first and then Chris has to go Torkoal one turn and then switch out again, that you can then be faster than the chlorophyll Leafeon or whatnot. So that's also a possibility. But I do think this is going to be a difficult team.
Yeah, it's and I'm thinking about potentially trying to stall out the sun, but it's not like on VGC where like every mon has protect. So it's hard to stall out weather turns in singles. So another thing is just that remembering that rapid spin and defog are not super present on this team, so hazards as well. Um, but yeah, this is gonna be a tough one. Chris, I think you drafted a great team.
Yeah. Next up, we have the Caoirigh. Connor, you can check the pronunciation of that and give us a rating. That also, aka the Irish Mareeps. And this team, I'm super thrilled about. It's also extremely fun when you listen to Emerson and Chris do the Scarlet analysis. You'll see that this team is almost on the top tiers. It's very, very similar to what Kyle drafted
Hmm.
as well. So both of those teams have Chi-Yu, they have Great Tusk, they have Orthworm, and they have Driftblim. So 4 out of 10, including three of the top, five Pokemon on each team,
Yeah.
are the same. So that's really fun. That's not the kind of thing that we've ever had the opportunity to have before in this league, because this is the first time that we've actually split the draft up into two separate two multiple pools basically. And so Emerson, I was curious to get your opinion before we dive into Connor's team. What how did you feel about splitting up the draft into the multiple pools?
Yeah, I think for me it was a welcome change. Specifically, I think because of the limited decks, and so then people could just try out different Pokemon. You really hopefully didn't have to worry about a lot of snipes. I know I didn't. And so just trying to make this a fun draft to try out these just really broken Pokemon, and being able to kind of take your pick. I think it makes the mirror matches very interesting. So I'm
Yeah.
actually incredibly excited to see how people handle that.
Yeah, that's such a good point about the mirror matches. It's not anything we've ever had to face before in this league, and so it's really kind of exciting and fun. I think for me, I also really loved splitting into two pools of seven. One reason, exactly like you said, about giving people the opportunity to draft. I just wanted to take a second to shout out Sean's sort of rankings of who's been the luckiest over time, and I want to encourage you, Sean, that the I feel like I am ranked very highly in that as having been very lucky, but I feel that I would want to look at the numbers again, but I'm pretty sure that I'm often lucky by being at the end of the draft.
Hmm.
I've certainly been in the last or second to last position many times, as I was in this draft as well. I was in the last position, and as a result, uh, I haven't always gotten to try the Pokemon out that I
Yeah.
really want to. Which is the nature of draft league. So Sean, this is my plug to encourage you to think about how the last pick is a little bit less good than the first pick. It's
Mm,
still better than the middle pick, but it's a little bit less good than the first pick. So that's my encouragement to you on that. And then the other thing that I wanted to say, oh yeah, so 7 was a lot closer to the front than 14. So I did actually, it was exciting. I got, one of the top 7 Pokemon. Um, and yeah, so I just think that the other thing that I think was really fun is that because, we're split into divisions and because our draft was split up by division, I think that was really clever because we're playing our division, we round robin the division, then we have a few interconference matches
mhm.
or interdivision matches. And so this more than any other draft before, I was able to, after round 3 or 4, I was able to like look at the other teams in my division and say, like, for example, the reason that I drafted Breloom first is because it's a great counter to like 5 of the 6 other teams, their
Yes.
first overall pick. And so I said, this is a great Pokemon and I want to have it in this meta. And then, at the risk of tipping my hand, I felt like, okay, Iron Valiant is the other top Pokemon that I don't have a pick. I don't have a counter against. I really, really need to think about that. And so I was able to, after round 3 or 4, you're really able to think about like, okay, these teams are starting to get fleshed out. Like, how is my matchup against them?
Right.
Do I need? It's less abstractly like, is Orthworm or Tinkaton better, and more, just in an abstract team, and it became much more about like, okay, which teams do I have a bad matchup against? Okay, in that matchup, which is better,
Hmm.
Orthworm or Tinkaton, and so that is, I thought was a facet of splitting the draft up by division because before when all the teams are mixed together, it's really hard to like think about because the schedule hasn't been made when we're doing the draft. And so it's really hard to think about like who am I playing this season? I don't really know. It makes it sort of hard to counter draft. So I thought that was like a fun added element this season.
I think that's a really important point of, again, I'm talking about, my experience in this Smogon tour, but I think, it's really solidified some of my, actually, why I drafted the way I drafted. And it's, I need to have a counter for a spot throw. Or like I need to
Mm-hmm.
have, again, a counter for the fish, the Chi-Yu. And so really making picks based on I don't, want to get swept by this threat because there's a chance that I will play two Chi-Yus.
Right,
There's a
right.
chance that I will play
You can't not have a counter.
yeah. Yeah. So I think that was actually a very wise way to draft for you, Adam. And in our analysis of the Scarlet League, that's something I said about your team was Breloom deals with these top threats like Priority Mach Punch. just takes out these, dark types. So,
So good.
yeah.
Though I have to say, I looked up the Chien Pao Ice Shard calc against Breloom, and it doesn't look great for me. So I have to
Yeah.
make something happen there.
Yeah, I guess you always have Focus Sash potentially, but
Yeah. There we go. We'll make something happen.
yeah.
So yeah, thank you for indulging me. Back to Connor's team a little bit. We mentioned how similar it was to Kyle's, but just this team on its own, it has amazing synergy. Earthworm is so threatening. I can say firsthand, Earthworm is just the threat that it might switch in
Mhm.
and heal up enough to get off another Shed Tail is incredibly threatening. And you can pass out to Chi-Yu, which if you look at the calcs on anything, it's absolutely nuts. You're seeing like
Yep.
400% minimum, like totally crazy. Um, and then Great Tusk, I think, is really, really, it's a little bit under the radar. It's like it's like Landorus. It's like what Landorus Therian always wanted to be.
Yeah,
Um,
hot take. Definitely, I think Great Tusk is better than Lando T. Like, yeah,
oh,
yeah,
it's it's insane. It's so strong. It doesn't have the quad weakness. It basically doesn't have U-turn, but that's pretty much it.
yep.
Compared to Lando. It is, one thing I was noticing, on the ladder and just doing calcs is that basically if you don't have a plan to knock off those leftovers, like this thing is gonna steamroll you.
Yes.
You are never gonna kill it. Um, so I think Great Tusk is just fantastic. It's a great switch into those like fighting moves on Chi Yu. It's a great switch into the ground moves, in addition to Earthworm. Um, so yeah, I think that's really fantastic. Azu is obviously, we've seen time and time again how good that is, and I'd be very curious how the Terra-ing fits in with that. If it's mostly a Terra Water for offensive, the boost on Aqua Jet, are you running banded Aqua Jet with Terra
Hmm.
Water to kind of bump up that damage a little bit, or what's the play there? I guess I'm really curious to see what Connor can come up with.
Yeah, absolutely. And is it going to be an offensive Terra to just, annihilate things with banded water Terra Aqua Jet? Is it going to be a defensive Terra? Grass Terra I can see coming out to, mitigate against electric moves. And Azumarill is also the Pokemon that counters, these top tiers. It takes on it takes on Chi-Yu, even though it's on the same team with it. Just with all the dark types running around, and having that priority, I think is also very important in this meta.
Yeah. One thing I'm a little bit worried about for this team is, obviously the offense at the top is insane, with Chiyu and Azu, but I'm a little bit worried that this team is very support heavy, and that basically if an opponent can take out the win con, so if Chiyu and Azu are off the board, then suddenly it is really difficult for this team to win. I think you're looking at Ursaring, potential like Ursaring setup
Hmm.
sets, or really like winning a Hazard War, and really like very slowly wearing down over time with like leftovers recovery on Great Tusk, and getting your rapid spins off just right. And I think this team does have a few tools to make that happen. Like I think Totus Gruul has um, some cool things to do here. I think Cyclozar, Kyle and I were talking earlier, and it's basically like a slightly less good version of Tornadus T,
Hmm.
with Regenerator. So even without Shentel, I think Cyclozar is really great. But yeah, I'm just a little bit concerned that there's going to be too much pressure on Chiyu, too much pressure on Azu to like come in to force things out, and they're going to take too much chip, and they're not really like there's not quite enough offense,
Yeah,
despite how offensive the top mods are.
yeah, I think that that's a good point. And just yeah, in trying to prep for this team, I have my game with Connor tomorrow, and It's hard though because first of all, like I am like traumatized by a Scarf Great Tusk because of my other league. I led with my Coco, hoping to KO it with Dazzling Gleam, and it just hit me with that close combat headlong rush move, and you know how quickly the HP bar just goes down. So I think that that's also a potential for Connor on this team, is making that Great Tusk offensive.
That's a great
And
point.
something else is like you might be spending. Okay, so like when you're team building, you're spending so many resources to deal with Chiyu and to deal with Azumarill that you might not even think of these other Pokemon that could be awesome offensive threats. Like,
Mm,
Cyclizar, that thing can hit hard. I mean, just it has Draco Meteor,
right.
and Toedscruel, that's another Pokemon I had in this tour. Like the stab combo of ground and grass actually is really good. And Toedscruel, if you even zero investment in some, special attack, that thing actually, was pretty offensive on my team sometimes. So, and it has a speed of 100. It's not slow. So, but I agree. I'm interested to see how Connor's going to navigate, how to keep his offense, you know, alive. So.
Yeah. I have to say actually that I need to change my favorite Pokemon. I forgot about Toedscruel. That is my favorite Pokemon this gen. I That is absolutely my favorite Pokemon. I cannot believe it. I'm so sorry, Toedscruel. You did not deserve that big diss from me, but I'm making it right now.
Have you seen it
Um,
running around in the Switch game?
yeah, I had it on my team. Actually, I think it was the very first what do they call them? The little like where the lights go up in the sky um and you join the raid.
Oh
Is that what
yeah,
they
the
call it?
the raid. Yeah.
It was the pre-evolution was the very first raid Pokemon that I got. So Toedscruel was like on my team. I had like Toedscruel and Charcadet on my team like
Oh
the
my
whole time.
gosh, that's
So
amazing.
it was really fun. Yeah, like what an incredible Paldean, variant. What an incredible name. What an incredible design and like how fun on the typings and stuff. I
Yeah.
just so good. Um
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention that webs on Masquerain plus Chiyu is fucking terrifying.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
Same thing with Azu. Azu really could benefit from those webs. So that's really scary. And this team has three rapid spinners, and they're
Hmm.
three good rapid spinners in Great Tusk, Cyclizar, and Toedscruel. So I think this team is fantastic on the hazards because Great Tusk and Earthworm also get rocks. And Toedscruel, I think, gets spikes and toxic spikes.
Yep.
And Masquerain gets webs. So this team is incredible on the hazards. It's incredible on the removal. And I think that the key for people who are facing this team is going to be to try and take out Chiyu and Azu. And I think the key for Connor is going to be to find creative ways to bring offense and to, basically not not sack, your offensive threats too early.
Yeah, I think this is, out of the teams that we've reviewed so far, Connor has a lot of hazard removal options. And actually, I love, having the multiple rapid spinners because that does open up Great Tusk to be offensive. So you aren't always having to run Stealth Rock Rapid Spin on your Great Tusk. Connor
Yeah,
has,
that's a fantastic point. That's really good. That's
yeah,
really true.
Connor has three knockoff users too. Like, I don't know
Wow.
if that was part of his plan was to take all the knockoff users off the board, but that can be a problem. So, alrighty.
Well, good luck, Connor. I think your team's great.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, okay, yeah. Next up, we have the Old North Noctowls coach Brian.
Yes.
First, I want to say, Emerson, did you get a chance to watch Brian's front page
I
video?
I listened to it on the way to work today and I was dying of laughter. Like honestly,
Oh,
Brian, like your voice was amazing the whole time. Like I'm looking
I,
forward to this every single week now.
it was incredible. It was like exactly what I needed. I sort of had a long morning, and I listened to it at lunch, and it was just exactly what I needed. So funny, so funny. Yeah, and I was totally transported to I don't even know where. I was thinking like the uh, Castlevania like spoof video that I used to watch, and it just has that perfect voice. Oh, so funny.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, so this team, Brian drafted Cinderace, Corviknight, Espathra, Tinglu, Blissey, Miss Magius as a top six. Really interesting. This team starts off. It does have a little bit of a speed gap, the way that we talked about someone else's team
Oh, with
earlier,
Liam's
maybe
team, yeah.
with Liam's. Yes, that's right. So it does have a little bit of a speed gap. I was looking at what does Modest Chi Yu look like here.
Mm.
I'd hate to be that. I mean, maybe Blissey can come in on those. Actually, I'd be super curious to see the counts. What's Chi Yu versus Blissey? So I'll have to do that another
Yeah.
time. But I think this team reads to me as different than the other teams
Hmm.
that we've looked at. I think it leans more heavily on the defensive side in what we've sort of been talking about as a possibly more offensive meta, more fast-paced meta. So we have Corviknight, Tinglu, Blissey, especially in the top three, in the top six each week, likely. And so yeah, I'm curious. How do you feel about that? Do you think that this like a sort of a is this like an anti-meta team, or is this sort of do you think that a team like this can be successful? Like I think it looks good on its own, but just sort of comparing it to the other teams, I'm curious. If you see, where do you think this kind of fits in?
Yeah, I think that I can be a believer in this team. I think that it's tough because of, this meta is so top heavy offense, just, click buttons sort of thing that, I think one of the strengths of this team is people are going to have to figure out how to break through it. And Ting Lu being the premier, like that thing doesn't die. So, and Blissey, on the especially defensive side. Um, so, I think I do worry about the offensive, lack of offense here, but also, if your win con is Espathra, which your win con is a lot of times Espathra, if you can get that thing in and get it set up, there you go. That's the only offense you need.
That's so
Um,
true. You just get rocks up, you just switch around, you just pivot between Corviknight and Tinglu and Blissey and back and forth and back and forth. And then you just slow U-turn into Espathra.
yeah.
And, once they've taken enough chip, yeah, that's so true. That it really does have that great win con.
Yeah, and just the ability of like Tinglu and Blissey and Corviknight to slow things down. When you just are trying to click, that most offensive move, and something switches in that then you have to recalculate and think, what am I going to bring in to counter this? I'm going to take it, potentially more damage from rocks. Um, so yeah, I think I can be a believer in this team. So yeah.
Yeah, one thing I want to point out is that this team actually the hazards are not very they're not where you would necessarily want them to be for a team that is going to be as like defensive and switch heavy. And so Tinglu gets stealth rocks, and then I think Glimmet gets rocks and has the toxic debris ability, which is great. But Blissey actually has a serious nerf in this game, which is that it does not get stealth rocks. It does not get teleport anymore.
Hmm.
It does not get wish, and I believe it does not even get heal bell.
Yeah,
And
poor Blissey.
so I'm really, trying to do some internal work to, that's the wrong word. I'm trying to, rethink Blissey and sort of recalibrate, um, where, I'm sort of thinking of the old Blissey on this team and seeing it fit in. And I wonder if the new Blissey really has the same role that I'm imagining for it, especially sharing that fighting weakness with Tinglu and with Corviknight not
Mm.
actually resisting the fighting. And so I kind of I'm curious. I wish that this Blissey were actually Screamtail on this team. That's really
Mm.
what I wish.
Yeah.
And so I I wonder if there's a potential trade opportunity. Um, but I think it'll have to be tested out in the the actual draft world before you can know that for sure. But I would keep an eye on that if I were you, Brian.
Actually, I do think that Blissey still gets Stealth Rock. I'm on the, OU uh tier
Ah,
right now, and it does still get Stealth Rock. So,
okay. Okay. Well, that's my mistake. So actually, that does change things a little bit here. That with that rocker, though I looked at a few other things on the board. What does this team look like if you trade Blissey for King Gambit?
ooh.
Um, you still get that fighting weakness, but anyway, just or something offensive. Even if you want to keep the defensive take, what about something like Satitan?
Mm.
Um, so anyway, not that I'm necessarily pushing you to do that, but I think that this team, I guess it's so different than the other teams that I don't really know. My brain doesn't like know exactly where it fits, and so I would just be sort of thinking throughout the season about like, is this right? Is this still right? Do I want to make a change? And I think
Yeah,
if you did want to make that change, that the Blissey is kind of where I would look first.
that's a good point of, Brian just seeing how it goes and making notes each time of, all right, this is, maybe what I wished I had in this battle, and can I make a trade for that? But I will stand my ground that Espathra is all the offense that Brian needs. So, and Cinderace too. I mean, that thing, yeah, Cinderace is good.
That's true.
Yeah.
We banned Libero in our previous season, so I actually don't have a good grasp on like how a Libero Cinderace is really going to operate in our league. And that speed tier is really nice, and it fits
Hmm.
in. I believe it slots in slightly above things like Roaring Moon, which is great.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think you're gonna want to bring some wall breakers if you want to beat this team. I hope you have them. But if not, you might have a hard time.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian covered his weaknesses pretty well. That type chart looks pretty good. The only thing that's kind of standing out to me is that water weakness. There's, no resistances except for Go Goat, which, I don't know. Could Go Goat be good? Sure. I think I want to see that thing do whatever it does. Um, so yeah, something like bringing a Pokemon that has a stab water move and potentially could do some damage on this team. But you have to bring in a Spathra counter. You have to things that potentially counter a Spathra. Whirlwind or Roar or some unaware mons can take it on. But once this thing gets behind a sub, sometimes it's GG. So I think it's gonna take a lot to just try and counter that thing.
That's totally true. And I think, being really careful not to just lose to the wrong Terra type on Corviknight. I feel
Hmm.
like a lot of people this season are gonna be surprised when it's Terra Fire Corviknight and they're like, what the hell? Like I did not bring a ground move because like why would I need to this, or
Yeah.
whatever it winds up being. Terra Bug, I want everyone to Terra Bug their defensive mons.
I really hope somebody does. Yeah.
um, yeah. So um, great.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you wanted to say about this team, Emerson?
I don't think so. I the only thing that I will say is just I'm glad that there's this team that is so different than the others, and I'm excited to see how it goes for Brian.
Yeah. Keep your win streak up. You already, won your first match, so keep up the good work, and yeah, really, yeah, you're doing us a service.
Definitely.
Um, well, next up, very exciting, Emerson. We have your team.
Yes, yay!
Do you want me to say what I think about your team first, or do you want to talk a little bit about why you picked why you picked the way you picked?
I can just kind of give a brief overview. Um,
Yeah, please.
so, um, I have never had Greninja in Draft League. And I was talking with Kyle, beforehand about, is Greninja really that good? And he convinced me of, it's having Protean. It only works, the first time that you click a move in that turn. You can't switch types in the same turn while you're still out on the field. There's a better way of explaining that it only works, one time as you're out on the field at that time. But you know, and then I just really thought about like what would be a good pairing with Greninja, and Garchomp really kind of stood out to me. Um, and I wanted to try and be conservative with my points and try and draft more of a balanced team, because that's what helped me in this other tour, was having a balanced team of having a physically defensive switch in, having a specially defensive switch in, and actually one of the Pokemon that I'm most excited about is Gallade. This thing gets it doesn't show it on here, but it has the ability Sharpness, which increases its slicing moves by 1.5. It does 1.5 damage. So
Oh,
that
so
thing
good.
is, it gets like, it gets like this move called Psycho Cut. There's another one called like Aqua Cutter that is new. That's a slicing water move. And so, trying to figure out how to use Gallade offensively, it might be tough because of its speed tier just is not that great for an offensive Pokemon. But yeah, just tried to draft balance and see where that took me in a lot of people versus a lot of people who drafted more like top heavy.
And this is I don't want to flatter myself too much here, but this is the kind of team that I would love to draft. And this is the team that this type of team I'm hoping will do quite well this season, because of, as I was talking earlier about how top heavy teams are going to be forced to bring, dip, more quickly into their, not very good low tiers. I think this team really has the depth, even like Rotom is not in your top six.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be bringing Rotom with some frequency, and Glaceon, has a ton of utility. I can't say that I know very much about what Squawkabilly can do. Um, and Kamala unfortunately lost its Sleep Talk Last Resort
Yeah.
cool combo, but still an interesting Pokemon nonetheless. But I'm really hoping that your balance team can do quite well with not being overly top heavy.
Yeah. Kamala lost knockoff as well. That was a Pokemon where I was like, oh, I know what this does, and then it doesn't get these moves in this meta. But yeah, I'm excited to use it. I think I'm just interested to see how this kind of level of balance does against, the Chien Paos and the Chi-Yus and what have you, if it's going to be viable or not. So
Absolutely. I think just a few notes that I had about this team. I think that the hazards, I think at first look they look great. At second look, I'm a little concerned, and at third look, I'm not that concerned. So, just like at second look, I just wanted to say that most of your hazards, you have Greninja, Garchomp, and Florges are where most of your hazards are, and or not Florges, sorry, Fortress.
mhm.
And I just wonder if you're gonna feel a lot of weeks like, oh man, I really, like sort of four move slot syndrome, where you're like, I didn't really want to put Stealth Rocks on Garchomp this week, but I really need Rock, or didn't want to put, I know Spikes is a little bit of an easier sell on Greninja because it has the great, Protean ground is really nice against like Volt Switches and stuff. Um, but I'm a little bit worried, or I wonder if you're going to have a tough time with that. But also, those are top tier mods. They're amazing mods to have. Rocks on, you're going to be, or hazards on, you're going to be bringing them every week, so you will have that flexibility. So I think ultimately you'll be fine there.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's a really good critique, and with the removal being really only Fortress is something that is a little bit concerning. I'm so sad that Rotom doesn't get defog.
oh, I know, and
But
oh, go ahead.
yeah, and also like the flying bird doesn't get defog either. So, it's kind of like, okay, uh not really sure
Right,
why about that. But
right.
something that I've been seeing in this meta is like Garchomp just being the bulky hazard setter. Like this thing also gets
Mhm.
spikes now. So you just hazard
Oh,
stack and
hmm,
you click Dragon Tail and you just have that disruption of like bringing in different Pokemon to just take chip. Can be a fun way to kind of use Garchomp.
yeah. I drafted Florges also, and Florges previously got defog, and it no
Yeah.
longer does. And so that was extremely, suddenly my team looked a lot less good. So Florges might be a mod that I'm thinking about trading. We'll have to see. But yeah, it's a bummer because yeah, my first look was like, oh, this team has perfect, removal options, and it
Yeah.
really, unfortunately, does not. Which is yeah, bummer.
Uh,
Um, the last thing I wanted to point out is that Skeledirge is fucking awesome. It's
it really
so
is.
good. It's so bulky. I did a calc ahead of time. A Crocodile Earthquake is, I believe from a Jolly Crocodile, is 74 to 85% on Skeledirge. Um, which
Wow.
is not what I would expect from, a stab earthquake from a pretty strong ground type. Um, so, and then Torch Song, its ability or its move, Torch Song is, extremely good with raising special attack. With every hit with 80 base power, which is insane.
Hmm.
And Skeledirge also gets unaware, which is just nuts.
Yep.
So that's not the kind of ability that I would have thought. Kyle actually pointed out to me one way to think about this is like it's just a slightly more offensive version of Hippowdon, like a fire
Mm,
type Hippowdon, which is what you might think that Torkoal is, but it's not. But
right.
Skeledirge is. So it's super interesting. I'm really kind of curious. I think it's a really exciting Terra Captain because you are going to have a ton of opportunities open up both defensively and offensively as well. I think unaware Terra Steel, like as all of a sudden, and it gets slack off too. So like
Right.
unaware Terra Steel, slack off, like whoa. So I think that is going to be a really, really potent force on your team, and I think people are going to underestimate it.
Yeah, even there's the move Terra Blast of, if I am doing a defensive Terra, that, with Skeleton, it's 110 special attack. So, and then Terra Blast, that move is like increased in power based on the Terra type as well. And so some of the calcs that I was doing, I was like, wait, what? So I think I'm gonna have a lot of fun with it. I think it's sometimes hard to justify, not all the time, but like losing its ghost type can be tough, trading that, immunity to, the fighting and the normal moves. But I think that having this as a Terra Captain helps it with, fire is obviously weak to a lot of common things. So, uh, but yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I think if you want to beat this team, if people want to win against you, Emerson, what they should probably do is put a lot of pressure on hazards. They should really be forcing you to bring your fortress in, have a plan for like how they're going to take that out. And then maybe this is the week to consider spike stacking. You don't have a ton of ungrounded mons, and the ones that you do have are in your lower tiers like Rotomo and Squawkabilly. So this might be the week to bring T-Spike. It might be the week to bring to Spike Stack, bring your webs, um, and yeah, maybe lean into your high pointed mons because this is sort of a more balanced across the board team. So I'd say those are kind of the strategies that I would think about, when sort of approaching this team.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, hazards are a bitch. uh, yeah, I remember, just the way that I got involved in Draft League was first of all, I was watching just a ton of VGC videos and then learning how important hazards are. It's like, whoa, this is a lot different. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great. Well, do you have any final thoughts on your team?
uh, I don't think so.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let's move on to our final coach, and that is Coach Danny of the Auckland Arcanine. Danny is a returning coach. In fact, many of you may not remember, but Danny actually joined us all the way back in possibly season 4.
Wow.
Um, yes, all the way we had Coach Tony Maggio and Coach Gannon Ritter were both joined us that season, and Michael Barrett also joined us that season. I think this was season 4. And so Danny, tried a little bit. Uh, Draft League wasn't right for him at that time, and has now come back around and has joined us again. So we're so excited to have you back, Danny. It's really great to have you involved, and yeah, we're just excited, and I'm excited about this fantastic team he drafted.
Yes.
Um, yeah, what do you think about it, Emerson?
I just love the synergy and like also I just love the like familiar faces, but also like I feel like the faces that he has of Gen 9 Pokemon are like the Gen 9 Pokemon of like Meowscarada and Goldango just sitting there like those are like premier Gen 9 Pokemon. I think premier like design wise as well. So to
Yeah,
see those, familiar faces, but also these new faces and just the synergy between all of these Pokemon is just really incredible. So, yeah.
yeah. To me, this is a classic draft league team,
Hmm.
especially those middle 4 Pokemon: Rotom, Sylveon, Arcanine, Donphan. All of
Yes.
those are like it. Like they check all the boxes. You get your priority and your fire immunity in Arcanine. You get your intimidate user. It previously got teleport. Donphan gets like Ice Shard and Rapid Spin and Stealth Rocks. I need to double check if it still gets Ice Shard. Rotom Wash no longer gets defog, but you got your Volt Switch, you have your Levitate, Sylveon, you have your Wish Passer, great Calm Mind, plus like some fun tech like Pixelate, Quick Attack. So those 4 are so classic, and I think you're so right that Meowscarada and Goldango are really representative of Gen 9. And imagine if those two were replaced with something like Azumarill and Salamence, like how much like a
Hmm.
Gen 8 or Gen 7 draft league team this would look like.
Yeah. Or like
So I think that's
Rillaboom and Aegislash,
oh
like,
yeah, oh my gosh,
uh,
absolutely, absolutely. Those are better. Those are great comparisons. Yeah, so this is just such a fun team. It really like kind of puts a smile on my face. Um, One of the things that in my time in draft league I've learned to be wary about for teams like that, and I've learned through a hard experience on my own part, is that I have drafted a number of teams where the team of 11 or the team of 10 in this case is better than the team of 6. When
mm,
you actually have to narrow it down to 6 particular Pokemon, suddenly you can't fill all the roles that you thought you could fill. Now, I don't know if that's exactly the case here, but that's a question that I have is Paldea and Tauros, pulling a lot of weight in terms of like the offense. Is Stonejourner, really important in making sure that Donphan can be flexible enough to not be your rocker every week?
Hmm.
With Rotom Wash losing Defog, does this team really have, the hazard removal options that it needs? Or are you relying too much on Donphan? So, um, I don't know. I wonder about that as you are forced to condense down to six for an individual week. If there will be some stress or some basically difficult cuts that you have to make.
Yeah, sure. That's a really good kind of critique of this team. And yeah, I think, John Fan is forced to be, mostly the stealth rocker and the rabbit spinner. And it does that job so well, like both of those things.
That's true.
And so, I think that John Fan's actually the perfect Pokemon based on, if I remember correctly, like what was left on the board was really great for Danny to draft. Um, but yeah, I think I just want to like talk up Goldango for a little bit. That's another Pokemon I had in this Smogon tour, and you can run so many sets with this thing. Like its kind of classic set is Choice Scarf, where you come in and you either click your Steel move or your Ghost move, and it has some pretty cool coverage moves too. Um, but being faster than things and being able to click either of those moves, which are having that stab combination, is just really incredible. And okay, do you know about this thing's ability? Like
Oh
zero
my
status
gosh!
moves work against it. Zero.
It's insane. So even things like defog,
Yep.
because it actually acts against Goldango,
Yep.
meaning like by lowering its stats, that move fails when you
Yep.
switch it in. It's insane. And I am really obsessed with pairing Goldango with Covert Cloak, which is a new
Yes.
item that maybe folks have not heard of. So I'll just read the ability here. It is that the holder is not affected by the secondary effect of another Pokemon's attack. So no scald burns, no confusions, from hurricanes, things like that. And so your some of your Rotoms, are good potential users. Potentially, maybe you're unaware Pokemon. You don't
Hmm.
want them to be, toxic with the poison point or things like that. So that is a really fun new item, and it is a great pairing with Goldango. That's actually it's just at least it's one of the ones that I am enjoying
Yeah,
right now.
definitely. I think this thing, potentially in the right matchup, you could run specs on it.
Hmm.
It also gets recover. You can run like a bulky set and, force things out and just click recover. You can, run trick on it to, debilitate whatever their, wall is with that choice scarf. Um, and yeah, I mean, this thing both spin blocks and defog blocks. Like, what is that?
So good, so good. Um, so I mean, I think this team is great. I really love it. Um, Yeah, I guess if you want to win, this team is a little bit on the slower side. Of course, you have Meowscarada that's way up there, but that's, I believe, the only thing above base 100. Tauros Paldea is at 100. Oh no, I guess you have Dracolock as
Hmm.
well. So that's true. So, possibly, if you can get set up, that would be um, helpful against this team. You might be able to start powering past Rotom Wash and
Hmm.
Sylveon, things like that. What do you think about the Terra Captains? Do you feel like Sylveon is good? Do you
I
think
think Sylveon.
Arcanine would be
I
better?
think Sylveon's completely excellent.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I think like just thinking about it doesn't get that many coverage moves, but if you put Terra Blast on it, that
Mm.
thing can, I don't know, like you can be sitting in front of a fairy and just click Terra Poison and kill it. Like, and so with Sylveon being bulky and with, the surprise factor of potentially having that terastallizing, can still click Wish, but it can also be kind of an offensive threat. I think you can even, run like just weird defensive sets with it too. I don't know if Sylveon ever runs like a defensive like Rocky Helmet. I don't know if that would actually be viable, but with Terra, I think like things can be possible. So
Right. Yeah, I think that's really great. I think you're right. I think you're right that Sylveon is better. I was kind of wondering if Arcanine would have been a more effective choice. Something about Terra Normal and
and E Speed,
Extreme
yeah.
Speed. Yeah, it was really fun to me. But I think you're right that Sylveon, especially with pointing out that sort of the coverage that Terra Blast will give it, I think is really smart. You're right to point that out.
Yeah, and again, think about like a specially defensive, Sylveon can be a steel type now. Like what?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
It doesn't, then it's immune to poison. You think that you're all good and dandy clicking your sludge wave against the Sylveon. Um, but I think that that's going to be pretty cool.
Right. That's fantastic. Well, I think that just about does it.
Yeah.
We've made it through our seven coaches. Is there anything else that you wanted to, briefly chat about, get in here, as a little bit of, either an announcement or a PSA or any final comments on any of the teams?
I think to kind of reiterate what Chris and I ended with of like I just really want people to have fun with this draft season of like there's probably going to be a lot of sweeps, a spot throw's going to pop off or you're going to have your nasty plot Hydreigon just clicking moves against everything and it being 6-0 does not take away from potentially you just didn't have a counter for that or it's just like that coach somehow figured out a way to kind of move past your team and so I think this is absolutely like a learning meta, and I think just having fun and using these really cool offensive Pokemon can be, I hope that that's kind of centralized in this season.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice to coaches, and I think that's something that I hope for as well. And just speaking about fun things, I know I shouted out the covert cloak. I just wanted to give a few other shout outs to new items because in my casual playthrough, I didn't encounter any of basically the competitive items.
Hmm.
And so I wanted to give a shout out to Booster Energy, which folks may not know about. If you haven't been playing competitively very much, this will basically activate your photosynthesis or fork drive ability. So all of the basically pseudo legendaries, the paradox Pokemon, you can basically proc their ability, one time using Booster Energy. So that is, I think that has an opportunity for a lot of fun things. And then Covert Cloak, which I talked about. But the other one that I think is extremely fun that some folks will love is there's a new item called Loaded Dice.
Yes, I was hoping you'd
With,
mention that.
oh, so cool. So it takes your multi-hit moves that hit between 2 and 5 times, and it will mean that you always hit either 4 or 5 times.
Dang.
So that is so good. There's a lot of Pokemon that suddenly now it makes sense to run Rock Blast over Stone Edge,
Mm.
on things like Tyranitar, maybe. Um, and yeah, anyway, so just those are just a few things. There's some other cool items as well. But I think those are the ones that I wanted to make sure folks knew about. Especially Covert Cloak and Loaded Dice, I think are just so neat.
Yeah, I was really hoping that you had mentioned loaded dice because that's something that I remembered, of how fun that is. Um, Something else just to kind of compare, like my very first draft league was the BDSP season, and there was like the
Mm.
change in that meta was like the offense was lowered. And now
Mm.
the change in this meta is that the offense is like off the charts. So, it's just again getting used to what's going to happen. And I don't know. I think this is just going to be a really, really fun season.
Yeah, me too. Well, I am really looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Coach Emerson, for taking the time out of your busy day to record a second, a second analysis with us. Really appreciate it, and your insight is, it's been really fun to record with you, and you have, you know, it's been, I've learned a lot already from all your insights, and I think you're one of the coaches that has the most insight into the new metas. And so, thank you for sharing, your kind of valuable experience with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adam. That means a lot to me, and it's been a blast to, sit and talk with you, just geek out about Pokemon. It's one of my favorite things to do, and you always have such great things to say. And this has been a blast. So,
Yeah, wonderful. Well, good luck, coaches, this season, and we'll be around. We'll see you out there.
yep, sounds good.